my child. You have been reading the dark stretch of the road ahead and calling it the whole truth about your future. Not the lamp already lit at your feet. Not the small circle of ground you can plainly see. Not the steps you have already crossed without falling. Only the shadowed distance, the part no eyes can reach. And you have let that unlit length convince you that you are walking it alone. Come close as I speak, and let me set against that fear something far steadier than a feeling. There is a promise already written, settled long before this season ever found you. And before these words are finished, I want it to become the ground you actually stand on. Why does the next step feel like a risk you take by yourself? When my word is already said, who walks in front of you on it? Stay near. Nothing here is rushing you. Let a single breath go out of you slower than it came in, the way a tight set of shoulders loosens when something heavy is finally lowered to the floor. Your whole life does not need deciding in the next minute. You only need to stand close enough to be told the truth about the patch of ground directly in front of you. Let the world keep its noise on the far side of the door for these few minutes. It has taken more of you than it was ever owed. I know the shape of what you are carrying. There is a decision you have walked through in your head after dark, again and again. Your foot never once leaving the ground. Because every ending you can imagine drops off somewhere you are sure you would not come back from. A page exists, in a notebook or a phone. Reasons one way and reasons the other. Copied over so many times the words stopped meaning anything. A mother turns over whether to start fresh in a town where her name means nothing to anyone. A man keeps a message saved among his drafts and opens it the way one stares through the glass of a door he cannot bring himself to push. The prayer about it grew short, not from caring less, but because asking the same thing for this long started to feel like an apology. Nothing in that is too small for me, and not one part of it is out of my sight. The quiet ones are just as known to me. There is the person who already crossed and now lies awake, wondering whether the crossing was a mistake. There is the one who heard "just have faith" so many times the words began to land, like a latch sliding shut. There is the young one watching everyone else stride along, sure of themselves, certain the instructions must have gone out before they got here. No stopwatch is running behind your back. The nearness that holds you is closer than the next step you have not yet taken. Beneath every layer of it sits the fear you have never spoken to a living soul, that a single wrong move undoes the little you managed to build back. That one bad choice costs you the people you love, the years it took to climb out, the thin, recent okay you finally reached. So motion stopped, and the stopping got dressed in respectable clothes. You named it patience. You named it discernment. You named it waiting on me. Part of it really was wisdom, and that part I would never put to shame. But a larger part was fear borrowing wisdom's coat, and the love I have for you is far too honest to let it keep a name that lets it linger. None of this began with you. The freeze that arrives a half second before any step was drilled in early, in a season when you had no say at all. Perhaps in a house where one wrong movement triggered a storm, and a small body learned stillness long before it learned forward. Perhaps through assurances that gave way the moment your weight came down on them, until movement itself came to feel like the very thing that gets a person wounded. It was never taught in sentences. It was taught in consequences, and the lesson was plain. The body that does not move is the body that does not get hurt. That lesson once kept a frightened child breathing. But the house where it was learned is not the road under your feet now, and what once shielded you has quietly turned into the thing fastening you to the edge. The portrait of me you have been traveling beside was painted by that very fear. You came to read me as a guide who folds the map away on purpose who lets the next stretch stay dark to see whether you will crack, who keeps his distance to measure whether you want it enough to deserve it. A God who walks his favorites down bright, certain roads and abandons you to grope through shadow with both hands stretched out. A God whose silence about tomorrow surely means he has not yet decided, or has decided and the verdict went against you. That is not who I am. Lay that portrait down, because my own word tells a story that has nothing to do with the one your fear keeps reciting. This is where the fear runs out of ground to stand on. It is written, and has stood written for a very long age, that I am the one who travels out in front of you, not lagging behind, calling instructions across an empty field. Out ahead, on the exact ground I am asking you to cover. Before your name was spoken, before this trouble had a date, the matter was settled and set down in words, so that your comfort would never hang on how strong your faith happened to feel on any given morning. The road is not a vacant length you have to locate by feel in the dark. By a promise older than the fear itself, it is already taken. So weigh the difference between two things a lifetime has blurred together. Being lost is one thing. Being led somewhere you would not have picked is another entirely. The lost have no companion walking with them and seize up at every fork. The led carry a voice that says, "Here, this way," and they turn before they can explain the reason. The plainest test of which you are is simple. The lost stand still, and you are still moving. Worn thin, uncertain, dragging a foot through whole seasons, but moving. You are not wandering all this time. You are being led, kept company by exactly the presence my word pledged you. A presence you could not always feel and yet never genuinely lost. Loosen for one breath the grip of whatever you have been holding too hard. Feel how long your hands have stayed clamped around a tomorrow no one ever asked you to carry by yourself. That clench is the stance of a person convinced the road runs empty. The promise tells you otherwise. And hear the part of this that the loneliness has worked hardest to drown out. You have never once walked a single mile of it on your own. The fear told you a different story, that you were the only set of footprints on the trail, that the silence on either side of you was proof of absence. But silence is not the same as solitude. The deepest companionship rarely makes much noise. A shepherd does not narrate every step to keep the sheep aware he is near. The nearness is simply the fact under everything, whether or not it is spoken. There were whole seasons you were certain you had been left to it. And looking back you can find, if you let yourself, the small mercies that arrived in exactly those seasons. The strength that showed up the morning you were sure you had none left. That was not you, sourced from some hidden reserve of your own. That was the one beside you, holding you up from a place too close for you to see. Some of what you named delay with such bitterness was simply the way being graded level before any weight was allowed onto it. There are drop-offs your eyes cannot find that are no secret to mine. There are crossings that must be made to hold before you take them, carrying what you are about to carry. None of that is the same thing as being forgotten. Scripture never pledges you a road with no waiting in it. It pledges you a God who does not abandon the road while the waiting runs its course. And the pace you keep holding up against everyone else's life, set it down where you stand. No two paths share a finish line. The one who seems so far out ahead is walking a different road on a different errand. You are not behind. You are kept by hands that never lose the count of the hours. And here is something the waiting taught you to doubt, that the promise settles for good. The way in front of you is not as tangled as the dread makes it look. Scripture speaks of a path made straight for the one who leans on the Lord rather than on the cleverness of his own understanding. Straight does not mean short, and it does not mean easy. It means there is an order beneath what feels like chaos, a direction running underneath the bends you cannot yet see around. Much of what you have read as a dead end was a turn you had not reached. Much of what looked like a wall was a door set far enough ahead that, from here, it still wears the face of stone. You have been bracing as though the route depended on your eyesight. It never did. It rests on the one who can see the whole length of it at once and has already gone down it on your behalf. Let me also relieve you of something you have hauled around, mistaking it for faith. For years, you have tried to do my share of this. Awake at night, trying to underwrite the next 10 yards, trying to believe with enough force to conjure the road into being, trying to manufacture certainty out of the right sequence of prayers. That was never faith. That was tiredness wearing faith's coat. Real faith weighs far less. It is not the disappearance of fear. It is the readiness to let your weight settle onto the next step while the fear is still talking, trusting what stands promised about the one who has gone ahead of you. Your portion was always only the step. The ground it comes down on was always mine to lay. If something in here is touching the part of you that has stood still too long, leave a single word below: path. Let that one word be your marker in the dirt, the quiet sign that today you began to move again. And up at the top of the comments you will see a pinned note holding 7 short letters, one to open on each of the 7 mornings ahead. They are yours. Carry them. Each one was written for a heart standing right where yours is now. The courage taking root in you will not announce itself the way you expect. From the outside, it looks like plain, unremarkable motion. Getting up when staying down would be far easier. Returning the call you keep letting ring out. Stepping into the room you nearly talked yourself out of entering. Saying the small true sentence instead of choosing the comfortable silence. That is the entire shape of the courage ever asked of you. Not the kind that gathers a crowd. The kind that lets a foot come down trusting a promise rather than the verdict of the eyes. Look, too, at who else is on this stretch of road, because the promise was never a solitary one. People have been set along your way, and you will recognize them, not by their credentials, but by something quieter. Their pace falls into rhythm with yours, and their words carry in some small measure the same settledness you feel when my word is taking hold in you. Do not walk past them because they show up plainly dressed and unannounced. Some of the truest fellow travelers arrive holding nothing but a steady step and a lamp no bigger than yours. And there are others being eased off your road. The friendship that fell quiet, the door that shut without explanation, the connection that no longer matches the shape of who you are becoming. You mourned a few of those as losses. A number of them were clearings, made so the way could open wide enough for the ones who actually belong on it. There is protection along this road that never shows its face. It stands written that watch is kept over those who walk with him, that he gives his messengers charge to guard the foot against the very stone that would have turned an ankle and ended the day. You will seldom catch it happening. You will mostly understand it afterward, glancing back, realizing that the thing which should have ended you somehow simply did not. That was not chance. You have burned through far too much strength in a defensive crouch, scanning the dark, braced for the next blow from behind. The promise does not ask you to stand guard over the road. It asks you to be present on it and to let the guarding go on above your head while you keep walking. That weight was never assigned to your shoulders. And consider how much of the dread you have carried was spent on roads you were never even set to travel. Look back honestly over the last few years. Count the disasters you rehearsed in detail at 3 in the morning that never arrived. The conversation you dreaded for a month that when it finally came, passed through you and was over in minutes. The collapse you were certain would follow one decision, and the ground that held instead. Most of what fear forecasts is weather for a country you are not crossing. The fear is simply slow to learn where your feet have actually gone, and slower still to admit it was wrong. So do not hand the next stretch over to a voice with a record that poor. Let it talk if it must. Walk anyway on the strength of the one who has already proven steadier than every alarm it ever sounded. There is also a table named in my word, laid for you in full view of the very people who were counting on your fall. Hear one thing about that table you may have always read backward. It is not parked at the finish line as a payout for arriving. It is laid out along the way. Somewhere in the middle of the journey you will lift your eyes and find more in front of you than you knew how to ask for. A seat across from you, taken by me, and the ones who once murmured about you watching from a distance with little left to say. What sits on that table is what I bring to it, not what your own hands managed to make. You will be fed long before the road runs out. And about the ones you love who have not yet found their feet, the names you raise to me when no words will come for your own troubles, the same promise stretches over them. The path being readied for them keeps pace beside your own for a while, and at a turn hidden from your eyes today, the two of them will run together as one. You are not charged with dragging anyone onto your road by force of will. You are charged only with walking yours steadily enough that, once their own sight clears, there is a way already laid for them to know and follow. So hear the heart of the matter. You will not lose your way by following me. Say it once more and let it land. You will not lose your way by following me. You may be weary and still be squarely on the path. You may be uncertain and still be exactly on the way. You may walk with a limp and still be drawing nearer to home with every mile. This road was never built to require a strong traveler. It has only ever asked for one who will keep going. Do not judge the whole of the road by how this single length feels beneath your feet. The hardest part is rarely the part that lasts longest. The steepest pitch of any climb tends to be the shortest one. What seems flatly impossible from where you crouch now will wear a different face a mile further along. And from higher up the trail, it will draw down to a size you would scarcely credit today. You're not being told to feel that this is true. You are being asked to move as though it were, to rest your weight on what has been promised, and not on what the incline whispers to your nerves. That is what faith has been since the beginning. Moving as though. Letting the foot rise off the ground on the word of God, and not on the report of your own two eyes. Lean in close now, because the one line all of this has been moving toward is a line I want to set in front of you plainly. It belongs to a real moment, with real and frightened people in it, who were standing precisely where you stand now. Picture them. A nation gathered on the rim of a land pledged to their grandparents and their grandparents before them, a land they had circled for a lifetime and never once set foot inside. The old leader who had carried them across 40 years of wilderness was at the end of his days. A younger man was stepping up to take the weight of all of them onto his own shoulders. Ahead lay a river in flood, and beyond the river stood high stone walls and reports of men the size of legend. Not one heart in that crowd was steady. They feared the water, and they feared the far bank, and most of all, they feared the quiet question no one would say aloud. Whether the God who had brought them this whole long way might somehow stop at the edge of the river and go no farther with them. Into that fear, into a people whose courage had drained out of them at the worst possible hour, One sentence was handed down to be carried across the water. This is what is written. Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 8. It is the Lord who goes before you. He will be with you. He will not leave you or forsake you. Do not fear or be dismayed. Take it apart slowly, because every clause of it is aimed at a different angle of the fear that has held your foot suspended over the ground. It is the Lord who goes before you. So the road is not a blank you must locate by groping in the dark. It is occupied already by the one the sentence names, which means there is no step your foot can reach that comes down on soil. He has not crossed ahead of you. He will be with you. Not once you have manufactured your nerve. Not after the threat clears and the crossing finally looks survivable. With you while the stretch is still dark. With you while the water is still high. With you inside the one doorway you have circled for years without daring to cross it. He will not leave you or forsake you, and read carefully, because that is not one promise stated twice, but two separate ones, and your life has needed both. Not leave. He will not walk away and let your hand fall. Not forsake. He will not stay near and quietly abandon you on the inside, in the hidden place where no one else would ever notice the giving up. And then, last in the order, and not first, do not fear. Mark the sequence, because it is the whole secret of the verse. Courage is not demanded up front, and the presence paid out afterward as a reward for producing it. The presence is given first, freely, and the courage is only what comes up in the soil of a heart that knows he is already there. Not a single one of that crowd at the border was strong enough standing alone, and the promise never once leaned on their strength. It leaned on his. And the reason that very sentence can carry across all these centuries and all this distance and find you is that my own son walked in his own flesh the one stretch of road that no other person could ever cross on your behalf. He stepped into the very depth of it, left in the dark alone so that you would never be. Given over at the cruelest water so that a hand would always be waiting for you on the bank. And he rose up the far shore as the one who now leads the way ahead of you. The soil you stand on holds firm because of the price he paid to make it hold. So look once more at the question you began with. Why does the next step feel like a risk you take by yourself when my word has already named the one in front of you on it? Here is the answer, and it is far plainer than your fear ever allowed it to be. Because no one ever showed you that the road was held in advance, that this was never a feeling to drum up, but a promise long since put into writing. You were convinced you went out into the unknown by yourself. The truth is you went into no unknown at all. Each footfall came down on ground already claimed ahead of you by the very one the sentence names. So let me leave you with something small enough to carry through the rest of your week. Bravery is not required, and no large vow needs making before you begin. When you next come to the edge of a decision, and that old stiffening climbs up out of your chest, you do not have to talk it down or win the argument against it. You only need a single quiet word to answer it with. Path. There is a path. It is held in advance. Then take the most ordinary step within reach, one message sent, one true sentence spoken, one threshold crossed, and let the written promise keep working in the deep ground beneath the fear, where it does its quietest and most lasting work. If it serves you, say it out loud once, somewhere no other ear can reach. There is a path. It is held in advance. A truth settles into the body more readily once the mouth has spoken it, and your mouth has spent more than long enough repeating the worst case back to itself. You are not being asked to feel a flood of confidence when you say it. You are only being asked to put a true sentence into the air, where, for years, only the fearful one has been allowed to speak. Let the two of them stand side by side for a while. In time, the truer one wins, not by shouting the other down, but by simply continuing to be true, long after the fear has run out of fresh things to say. There is one further thing, and it asks the least of you of all. As you walk, lift your eyes off the dirt, right at your toes now and again, only long enough to take in the quiet evidence scattered along the trail, the unexpected kindness on a day you were braced for none, the line in something you opened almost by chance, that read as though it had your exact name pressed into it, the small mercy you would have walked straight past a year ago. None of it is mere coincidence to the eyes of faith. Train yourself to look for it, and the entire character of the walk begins to shift around you. The first time you put this into practice, you will probably feel nothing change at all. You may feel just as shaky on the 10th try. But slow work is true work, even when it is invisible, and there is no clock running against you here. Somewhere past the 30th time, you will catch your hand already on the latch before the fear has reached the end of its warning. Somewhere beyond that, you will glance back at a section of trail that once emptied your lungs, and from the height you have gained it will seem almost small. That is what higher ground does to old terrors, and the only price it ever charges is the steady act of walking. And do not lose heart over the days when you cannot sense me as plainly as your heart aches to. That is not absence. That is only the beginning of a long acquaintance. The more miles two travelers share, the more certainly one learns the cadence of the other's step without ever turning to look, and that recognition is precisely what this road is forming in you. The signal may run faint for now. Stay on the path. It clears the further you go. You have not been wandering, however the seasons have felt. You have been led. The promise was set into writing long before your fear drew its first breath. And across all of it, the promise has been more than enough. The road carries one out ahead of you. Your trembling could not empty it. Your delay could not undo it. Your hardest step could not seal it shut. A hand that does not let go is holding it open. Lift the foot. Lay it down. He has gone first. Amen. If this devotional found the part of you that has stood frozen at the start of a step, look for the pinned note just below this video. Inside it wait 7 short letters, one to open across each of the 7 mornings ahead on this same walk. They are yours to keep. After that, pass the video along to one person you know whose feet have been too afraid to move, and keep coming back, so the road ahead has a way of finding you again. None of this was ever meant to be walked by yourself.